All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi, Ani, and welcome to a special council meeting to deal with the 2021 budget. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I need a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda. Moved by Randy and seconded by Rick. All those in favor? Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interests? Seeing none, before I turn over the presentation to our CAO, just want to let everyone know what the process will be. Marc Gagnon and Marc Fleury will lead the budget deliberations. What we ask you is let the department heads do their presentation and then they can ask questions afterwards. If you have a questions, please signal to me that you want to ask a question and I will put you on the speakers list and then the question will be referred to either one of the Marks or to the department head. So any questions regarding that? No? All right, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Marc Gagnon and Marc Fleury to take us through the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council, and welcome to staff. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules on a Thursday afternoon to go through this very valuable document, which sets up the municipality for the year. Hard to believe it's been 12 months since we entered the COVID phase and different way of doing business, as we can see in the manner we're doing things today. So. Please have patience with us in terms of trying to address your questions at one point in time. And we'll certainly get through this. So just to give a brief overview of where we're at. So we'll be talking about the budget planning and direction received from council on December 3rd. Then we'll be going into the economic development presentation. Library will be invited to present their financials and requests for 2021. Then our treasurer will go into our unaudited actuals. We'll go through every department one by one. What we'll do with the departments to try to facilitate things and to liberate some of the managers to go back to their regular duties is we're going to present the operations, the special projects, and the capital all in one. Then we'll summarize the capital, Marc Fleury and I, for council at the end of the presentation. We'll discuss the capital budget as a summary, our reserves, and our taxation history, and our final bottom line. So Carly, if you can go to the next slide. So just to give you an idea, we're at the first draft budget deliberations of February 4th, and due to ongoing protocols and orders from the province, that date was originally scheduled for January 23rd, and now has been recreated till today. Depending on today's results, we either will review the recommendations, come back to council with adjustments if required. If none are required, we'll go straight to the public presentation that will be done at a council meeting on March 3rd, and then thus giving the public an opportunity to provide their comments before council considered the final budget approval at the March 17th meeting. Just a quick summary. On December 3rd, we had a good conversation and a good planning session with council and members of senior staff, at which point we had discussions surrounding the issues around COVID-related funding and how we can make use of those funds. We did present the council some challenges and some opportunities, and did have a fairly lengthy discussion in terms of increased salaries to address new positions in the frontline positions, in terms of environmental services, in terms of bylaw, to assist with the monitoring and enforcement of bylaws in timely responses, and some improvements to public works to help with overtime and backfilling and cover time so we can still be productive throughout the year. We did have discussions on how to address some of these increases through levies. I'm happy to report Within this document, there will be no additional levies in terms of environmental or bylaw introduced in those stages, but we are discussing a new levy under the OPP fees, which we'll discuss later on. And we did have a discussion in terms of how our capital vehicle purchases going forth between the next 5 years will be substantial, and you've all received documentations on our 5-year forecasted plan. At this point, I apologize to Councillor Bob for yesterday, who requested our fleet. I was under the impression that the documentations for budget incorporated all of our equipment and vehicles. It did not, and thanks to Matt Fleury for submitting that to you this morning. If we can flip the page, out of that whole 2-hour session, it was a consensus received that we complete the ongoing projects identified, which are included the accessibility trails here at the Noelville building, beautification projects to continue, fitness center in the Alban Community Beach. We had discussions regarding Montague culvert and capital projects, and we also had discussions around the completion of our environmental assessment process, which began in 2011 and is still outstanding, and we need to address to increase the life capacity over at our landfill. The message was clear to ensure that we don't reduce any of the services within public works and waste management. And there was a discussion around proper long-term community planning to take place in the future in terms of discussing long-term projects, long-term issues, looking into 10, 15 years ahead, and setting up the community for future, including proper public consultation to occur. Council did mention additional little projects that they would like to see included within the budget process, a concert series at Joe Chapin Park, the Alban Community Rehabilitation Project. We did have discussion that would take place within long-term planning regarding library buildings and fire hall buildings. The Noelville Park, a Noelville Park or playground facilities for kids potentially in Noelville. We identified a need for the community food bank. And all of these have been taken into consideration, and council at the time directed staff to be, if you're able to incorporate all of those improvements and projects to remain in place, that if you would come back to a potential increase of 2.5 to 3% on our taxes, that would be very reasonable for council to consider. Happy to report that the information that we'll be going through today takes into account 99%, if not 100% of the discussions that took place during our deliberations. And we are currently sitting at 2.49% as a proposed tax increase. So good news, but now we'll go through the details. So at this point in the agenda, we're moving into the economic development portion, and I would like to ask our Regional Economic Development Officer, Sebastien, to please present his little slide presentation in terms of objectives for 2021.
Hello, everyone. Sebastian here. Am I taking control of the PowerPoint, or is Carly going to do this verbally with me?
We'll let Carly continue, Sebastian, if that's okay.
Okay, sure. So good afternoon, councillors. Thank you for having me. My name is Sebastian. I'm the Regional Economic Development Officer for Sudbury East. I was retained in 2018 by your municipality through the CENO program to assist you with the implementation of the projects you approved in your strategic plan. Every year around budget season, I speak to your council about the upcoming projects we intend to complete. Next slide, please. This year's economic development expenditures are forecasted to be at $33,000. These funds are allocated to 13 activity items as listed in the budget plan, and to cover the local economic development committee to implement additional projects that may come up during the year. Next, please. The activity items in the plan were identified through, one too many. But the activity items in the plan were identified through a correlation to the French River Strategic Plan and to the broader shared goals of the Sudbury East municipalities. Next. This year's plan takes a policy-driven approach rather than a capital spending approach. Next screen, please. So we're targeting investment readiness policies around accommodating green energy, framework around investment intake processes, commercial industrial planning, tourism readiness in a post-pandemic economy, redefining how Sudbury East interprets different levels of farming, and supporting and engaging with broadband high-speed internet endeavors as required. As a result, these framework policy-driven initiatives within this plan only require light operational funding. Next, please. And you can hit next one more time. So because of this approach, the economic development budget decreased by 5.7% or $2,000 over last year. This year's budget could be looked at as being one of the most affordable departments to operate in 2021. I trust that a savings of a few $1,000s is music to your ears, and I look forward to supporting the French River administration on these projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Sebastien, is there any questions for our Economic Development Officer? Randy and Renee.
Through you, Madam Chair, just looking at the list of things you wish to accomplish, do you have a plan going forward for your tourism readiness programs and what you'll be implementing?
Councillor, no, we haven't identified those yet. That is the activity. It's to make those identifications.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have Renee.
So just, so 33,000 would be our portion, or is that divided by the municipality, Sebastian?
If I may interject,
This year we took it.
sorry, Sebastian, go ahead. And
Go ahead,
I'll
Mark.
if I need to.
Okay, hi, Councillor. This is your portion to the CNO plan. We took a bit of a different strategy this time around with the budgeting, partly because we've had some contribution challenges in past budgets, which left some projects perhaps delayed is one way to say it. And so this year we've catered the plan so that whatever we propose in each municipality is specifically for them. And so the budget is specifically tailored to French River, regardless of how the other municipalities participate in the greater scheme.
Okay, thank you very much.
And just for council's information, if I may, Madam Mayor, $5,000 of that 33,000 is directly related to our funding of Sebastien's wages through the CNO program. As council is aware, we had discussions in terms of the CNO program is coming to an end with the subsidies later this fall. FedNor is willing to look at another 3-year program with the first year of 90% funding with decreased funding going from there. So we'll be reporting back to council on these initiatives. Whenever we can operate economic development in this fashion at this level with this cost contribution, I think is a very positive.
Thank you. Any further questions for economic development? Dean?
I just can't help but express my curiosity at the item of accommodating green energy. And I'd like to hear a little explanation of what the heck that means.
Go ahead, Sebastian.
I can definitely elaborate on that. Oh, was someone saying something?
I'm giving you the authority to answer.
Right, thank you, Mayor. No, I can definitely speak to that. You know, with climate funding being a big driven sector of all the funding announcements from the federal government and provincial government, there's opportunities for us to tap into that. For example, one of the things we're looking to do from a planning perspective is including public utility as a permitted use through different sets of zones. And what that'll allow us to do is to accommodate manufacturers or producers of clean electricity, such as solar farms or wind farms. We don't have any language in our policies at the moment that permit or allow these types of energy production. And so we just want to take these policy changes and implement them as a form of investment readiness. So should any of these endeavors come to our municipality, we're already prepared to accommodate them and fast track that through into French River. In addition to that, we've all heard of the revolution of electric vehicles. We have gas stations in our communities, but we don't have electric vehicle charging stations in our communities. And so this endeavor specifically it speaks to the language and the policies that we have in our official plans and zoning to just be a little more positioned as a greener community and to allow these types of investment to come into our community whenever they do.
In the past, we've had people make application or at least announce intentions to put solar farms and wind farms, solar farm in particular, that never came to fruition. I suspect it's because the province has cut back on how much money they're ready to pay for electricity produced on solar farms and wind farms, that it just isn't productive to develop these anymore. But then maybe I'm in the dark. Maybe there's some information out there that I'm not aware of, but I don't see that happening right away. We can't afford the electricity we have now. But in any event, it's interesting that to see just whether we get any interest in the development of that, and if so, where we would get it. And it still has to come to council for approval on any of those, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I'll leave it with that.
Thank you, Dean. Any other comments or questions for Sebastian? Rick?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to piggyback on Councillor Dean. I think the green energy is here to stay. I mean, it's not going away. So this is basically just getting stuff ready in case, not in case, but when it does come about. I mean, electric vehicles are coming one day. So to position ourselves to be able to have electric stations down the road is not a bad thing. Especially a lot of people live in the area and they'll commute to either Sudbury, North Bay or Sturgeon Falls in the area. So I think it's a good way of getting ready for things to come. And the governments are putting more and more money over time. And it's been proven that some of those energies are very efficient. You know, there's a lot of complexities in getting there, but I think it's a good start. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you, Sebastian, for your presentation and the work that you do for us. And I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Sebastien. Appreciate it for you taking the time to present your projects today. So we'll move on to the French River Library, who, as you're well aware, have gone through some changes over the last couple of years, and like to introduce Chris, the new CEO that was appointed back in October to the library board. So Chris, it's up to you. Off you go.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris from the CEO of the French River Public Library. As you can see, we're requesting the same budget as the previous year, and we would end up with a $6,000 deficit, which will be financed by use of our general surplus. A big part of our budget goes towards human resources. As you can see, our revenues have decreased due to the facilities being closed to the public and only offering curbside pickups during the pandemic. We are increasing our book allowance by $2,000, as I feel it's in our best interest to better serve our patrons and attract younger families in our community, and to encourage them to use our libraries with a greater book selection available in the children's section especially. We also have increased our office supply allowance by $4,000 to include new outdoor signs at both branches. We offer a variety of programming in our community for all ages. It is a bit challenging at this time by offering curbside options only, but my staff are excellent at coming up with great ideas to fulfill this need. We have been very active with the United Way grant for seniors by organizing all the meal deliveries and setting up the Zoom yoga sessions for them. We are also going to be delivering Valentine packages to approximately 85 seniors next week. Our team is looking forward to continuing to offer a wide variety of programs and services to our community, whether it be curbside or in person. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Chris? I just want to say one thing, Chris. The library was also quite involved with the mental health baskets for seniors back in the late spring, early summer. Also like the direction that the library is going into, which is more community related and not just siloed within the library. And the outreach to the community is amazing. So great work.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions for Chris? Seeing none. Thank you, Chris. And keep well.
You too.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you, and thank you, Chris. Just maybe going forward, I would ask that if you're presenting managers or directors, to please turn your camera on, just as a viewing point for counselors and the general public to put a face to the voice as well. So that being said, this year has been a different year. As you recall, last year we brought onto the senior staff a new treasurer who started late January, and actually his first meeting with council was the first budget deliberations. So things this year are looking a little bit different. And I would like to ask our treasurer, Marc Fleury, to go over our unaudited actuals for 2020. Marc?
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. This is a recap of the year that we just passed. So it's 2020, and just to emphasize, these are unaudited actuals. So the audit is planned for April. So there's adjustments that are being done, but these should be minor in nature. So bottom line, if we start with the bottom line, we forecast, well, for last year, a net increase of the general surplus of about $212,000. And this, and the budget, we had budgeted using a general surplus of $186,000. So it's a difference of about $400,000 on a general surplus. So an increase of 212 instead of a decrease of 186. So if we just go for a quick recap, and a little bit of this has been done last night, so I'll just go a little bit in detail. So the net, the actuals for 2020, the net, we achieved an operating surplus of $1.3 million versus a budget that was $610,000 with a variance of $706,000. The variance is a combination of revenues and increase in revenues and decrease in expenses. For revenues, we have the COVID funding, Safe Restart funding. We received $313,000 in 2020. And also there was capital grants for the Small Communities Fund for the landfill and the waste management of $77,000 that was received during the year that was not budgeted for. And also we had an increase in users charge of about $120,000. That's related to the building permits, the SEBs, and invoicing for SEBs and the aggregate revenues and other miscellaneous user fees. And also we had a gain on sale of the dozer, a used dozer, and also insurance proceeds of $116,000 for revenues. And we had also an increase of interest of $56,000 for the full year effect of the term deposit that's fixed for 3% per year of $3 million. And there was a reduction in expenses of $55,000, essentially reduction in utilities due to fixing the electrical pricing at a lower rate, and also lower pricing of fuel, and also due to COVID, due to COVID, some of the facilities were closed for a portion of the year, so less heating costs for this. And this, for the adjustments of for calculation of tax levy increase, we have capital additions. We had an increase of capital of $550,000. The major items are the dozer. We had to replace the dozer during the year. That was the landfill dozer. That was $202,000. And we had an increase in capital expenses for related to roads due to double surface treatment for Whippoorwill Road in Albin, and also some unplanned additional costs due to blasting. And we had other expenses here and there, but basically those are the two major ones that should be noted. For transfer to reserves, you will note that there's we had planned $125,000 as a transfer to reserve for operating, and we are transferring $379,000, a difference of $255,000. That's related to COVID safe restart surplus that can be used in future years for COVID-related operational expenses. For transfer from reserves, you'll notice that there's an increase of transfer from reserves for capital. That's in relation to the additional capital we had to procure, especially the dozer and the roads. And so that explains the change of $212,000 versus increase of surplus of $212,000 instead of use of general surplus of $186,000.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Questions from council? Don't see any. I guess everybody's gnawing at getting into the budget. So, okay, let's move on, Mark, to the next one.
Okay, we'll start with the page 3 of your package, which is General Government Council. Like Mark was saying, we're on the PowerPoint. We have the net results noted, and then you have the details. So for General Government Council, we had budget of $146,000 for expenses, and we spent $109,000 for difference of $37,000. But basically, it's because of COVID. The conferences were virtual this year. We didn't have any travel related costs related to conferences. And also there was some events that were deferred or canceled for public relations. And next year's budget, we're proposing $133,000 of expenses, which is a reduction from last year's budget of about $14,000. That's related to conferences again. We reduced the budget because a portion of the year will be virtual conferences again this year due to COVID. Any questions?
Okay. Seeing none, move on to the next one.
Okay. For the I have a lot of pages, if you can bear with me, sometimes I'm flipping here and there. For the government, General Government Corporation, we have for this year's or 2020 results, we had revenues of $291,000 budgeted, and we achieved $408,000, which is a variance of $117,000. The result is interest income, like I said, for $56,000, and also the gain on sale of dozer. Oh, sorry, Mr. Madet.
Good. Can you just change the slide if you're ahead?
Oh, no, it's in the middle. Sorry, it's
yeah, it's under. It's the same slide.
It's the same slide. Sorry, it's in middle of the slide. General Government Corporation. We have $291,108 for 2020 budget for revenues.
Well, I'm saying we're just seeing the draft 2021 budget on your PowerPoint. That's what I'm asking. Are you changing that as you go? That's what I'm asking.
Oh yes, I'm going from I'm explaining the 2020, and then I'll explain the variance with the 2021 budget, if that's okay with you.
Thanks.
Okay, sorry. So for the 2020, which is the three first columns, we have an increase of $117,000 in revenues, and that's explained by the interest income, which is of $56,000 related to the GIC, the $3 million fixed at 3% for the whole year. And also there's a gain on sale of dozer and insurance claim for 57. So it explains the 117,000 increase. For the expenses, we had a budget of $1.4 million for 2020 budget. We achieved $1.5 million. The difference is basically as a MPAC, the annual fees for MPAC has been moved from other department to general government to be in line with the audited statements. And for budgeted income revenues, we have a budget of 337,308, which is an increase of 46,200. The main items are basically the interest income that has been increased to reflect the full year GIC income of 3% over for the $3 million that we fixed. For the expenses, we have a budget of $1,521,042, which is a difference of $100,417. That's again for MPAC, the annual fees of $85,000 is budgeted in that column. Those are the two main items. And you all see there's also an increase in other expenses like insurance that's in there. So there's a reduction, and there's some reductions related to the virtual conferences again for $10,000. So if you have an increase in insurance, we have a decrease. So there's a net of $100,000 of increase for expenses for general government. For projects. To simplify the presentations, I tried to separate the operations from projects so it's easier to analyze. For projects, we had a budget of $110,000, which is related to the connectivity projects and the voice over IP projects that are funded through modernization funding. We achieved $194,835 in revenues, which is a difference of $84,000. Again, it's related to the projects. We had projects during the year that was added. We had the food bank we have funding for the food bank that's there. We have United Way funding. We have we have the insurance claim that's in there in that line. And next year we have a budget of for the expenses, we had a budget of zero. Actuals of 20,941, which is a variance of 20,941, again related to the project expenses for food bank and United Way. For the budget for next year, for 2021, we have a budget of revenues of $77,331, which is a reduction from last year's budget, $32,000. That's related directly to projects like food bank, we have the food bag, we have the council modernization fund to fund the council audiovisual project. And so in expenses, we have $47,331 as an expense, which is an increase of 47,000. You will note that the projects, they're net zero. So if there's an increase in revenues, there's a related expense. The difference of $30,000 related to the council chamber audiovisual upgrades. The revenues are here, the capital grant, but the expense is in the capital budget. For capital, like I said, I mentioned already, the council chambers audiovisual upgrades of $30,000, and there's a replacement of computers for $8,000. That includes 3 computers, one for the deputy treasurer, and one for spare, and another one to replace an aging computer.
Thank you. Questions on this slide or these items? Randy?
Through you, Madam Chair, why are we purchasing a spare computer when you can purchase a computer and have it delivered in 24 hours?
The lead time is 6 to 8 weeks for a computer.
Oh, really?
Actually, yeah, right now there's none.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a question. I just wondered why.
Yeah, it's not a spare. It's used. It's just when we say it's spare, it's because it's not. It's being used sporadically.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't want public to think we were putting a computer
No,
shelf somewhere unused just in case.
no, not at all.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mark?
Matt, could you just speak to your proposed software upgrades in the Treasury Department? Just to give
Yes.
council
We have. Sorry.
understanding?
Yes, we have a project that we submitted. It's a project for $20,000, funded by the Modernization Fund to review our processes, especially payroll. A lot of manual processes, and we want to explore the electronic timesheets and electronic integrations into our software, reduce chance of errors, and also reduce the manipulation of data, and also get the online approval by managers, so less paper and more easier way to function. And we want to review also the tax certificate process. It's a little cumbersome. We try to get it more electronic, and also there's online payments from banks. It's manually inputted in the system. Again, chances of errors. If we can integrate the files from the bank into our software, we're going to reduce the time that it takes, and also reduce the chance of errors. And there are errors sometimes because roll numbers they're what, I don't know how many digits, but they're 20, 25 digits, and those you can make an error very easily. So we're proposing a project for $20,000. Hopefully it's going to be less than that, but without knowing what the implications are if we have to add a module here and there. This is what I can work with during the year. If it's less, for sure we'll spend less, but and it would be financed by deferred revenue, which is modernization revenue in deferred revenue.
Randy?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So Mark, then if we're going to further our digital capacity and become more online with all this, we can certainly expect to see in the following years a reduction in the office supply costs for paper and printers and such things. Can we not then?
Yeah, it'd be nice. Yes, that's
Yeah.
that's the. I think we're getting more and more online with or paperless with the SharePoint, and that's my take on this. We're very advanced. It's just we need to just continue,
Right.
and especially during COVID, we have to work from home, or there's people here and there, and if it's paper, you have to. It's more difficult.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Dean. You're on mute, Dean.
It off, but it gets back on.
Yep.
I noted when I was reviewing the budget document, this modernization fund, and I'd made a note to ask a question. What is the modernization fund, and where is the money coming from?
The funds were received, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 2 years ago, in 2019. We received an amount of money that was sent to all municipalities to help modernize their operations. That was funds from the provincial government. We received, it was about 600,000.
Yes, just over 600,000 originally.
Yes. And if you see in your package, in the back, we have most of that money still left in our bank account. We have the $547,000 still in our bank account that's unspent. The amounts of money we spent on the connectivity project, the internet, voice over IP, and we're going to spend for this year. We're proposing in this budget, 2021 budget, to use 20,000 of this for finance. There will be 20,000 of modernization used to acquire a software for asset management. And sorry, Randy.
No, go ahead. Finish.
Oh, okay.
After you.
I've seen you, right?
Yes. And for council upgrades for the audiovisual, it's going to be financed by modernization funds.
Okay, thank you.
Randy?
I'd forgotten
You,
about
Matt.
the 600 grand.
Yes.
Through you, Madam Chair, the revenue or the expense of the modernization of the land of the review we did for the waste management, that also came out of that fund, did it not?
It's a separate fund. It's the same name, but it's a different envelope.
Okay, thank
Yes.
Other questions or comments? All right, and let's move on to the next one.
So at this time, our fire chief, Roch Bigra, if you're online, if you can put your video on, and then the floor is yours to present your budget, please.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, Council. Fire department this year was able to recoup some costs of just over 14,000. Those were mostly at the end of the quarter. Last quarter was a lot of motor vehicle accidents, so we're able to recoup some costs. As for revenue, we budget zero, as we have been doing in the past, because we can't anticipate bushfires, accidents, and other emergencies. As for salary and wages, it's an increase of 26,000 for the fire chief becoming full-time, and the cost of living and health benefits. Fire administration, there's a proposed for 12,000, a decrease of 22,500. That was for a one-time fee for the dress uniform of 27,000, which was passed in 2020. But there is a portion of that budget was deferred to 2021 of 4,500 to finalize that purchase of the dress uniform for the rest of the firefighters. Our fire communication contracting services, there is a decrease in that line item from to 18,000, a decrease of 4,500. Those funds were reallocated. This was a caught by our treasurer, Mark Fleury. It was just decoding from our RN at the office was probably just miscoded for some telecommunications expense. So fire communication, next item, that will be an increase of 1,500, where those funds were moved from the previous budget of 4,500 for telecommunications, cell phones, and other equipment. But there is a deduction of 3,000 due to the cancellation of internet at the fire station, our fire communication tower, due to the modernization fund of voice over IP and a connectivity project. Fire training, an increase of just $100 to 18,000. This is for our emergency first responder course to conform to our tiered response agreement, which is a fee of about 10,000. This is to conform with our partners EMS and DSAB. As for fire prevention, there's no increase. Buildings and utilities and contractors, for the buildings and the facilities, there is no increase. Maintenance and repairs for our fire truck, an increase of 500. This is to keep our pump or two in Alban up to snuff until it gets replaced, which we're trying to keep it going as long as we can. Contracted services remains the same at 7,000. We are no changes there. Everything is still the same prices from our contractors for next year. Materials and upkeep for firefighter equipment and firefighter gear, just an increase of 500. Those are just to get some more tools and more equipment for them on fire scenes. As for contracted services for cleaning our PPE and keeping our equipment up to par, no increase. Any questions?
Any questions for the fire chief? Seeing none. Oh, Renee?
So when we did our conference last week, they talked about something with the new 911. Is there going to be any added cost to that to the municipalities, you know?
At this time, for the next generation 911, there's no added cost at this time. If those added costs would come, it would be through our Smith Falls Fire Dispatch, and they would advise us before any additional costs.
Okay, thank you.
As for capital budget, this year, bunker gear is year 3 of 3, proposed 20,000. This will be the final year for the next 7 years. After that, we'll be restarting again with our bunker gear program. AutoX tools is 50,000. This is to replace our aging AutoX tools at the Station 1 in Wellville, which is over 30 years old. Is life expectancy has surpassed it. It's no longer functional. We are looking to modernize our department and going with battery operated e-tools and lighter and quicker to use.
Any questions? Seeing none.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, I didn't see you. All right, go ahead, Bob.
Okay. Sorry, and I had it previously and you didn't see me there. I just want to go back to revenues, and I find it very odd that we're not budgeting, although minimal, something in revenues, because the whole budget process to me is to try and foresee the future. I know it's, but by past history, I don't know, I think we could budget something in there, even if it's very minimal. But seeing a zero to me is not kosher.
It's very hard to budget zero, to budget something. It's we can't predict if they're going to have major forest fires or major bushfires or even motor vehicles accidents. We don't want those to happen in our community. We are trying to be a safe community, but things do happen. And if I get the proper information, we do bill out. But if I don't, we can't bill out.
Mark?
Just to add to that comment, globally as a CEO and as the leader of the group, I'm a strong proponent of not over projecting revenues, because when you start over projecting revenues and not meeting your targets, that's where you get in trouble. I rather be more cautious. And over the years, we've seen revenues at 0 in the fire department. We've seen revenues up to 54,000. So it's a hit and miss. And if we're consistent and those revenues do happen to come in, then they're helpful. But you're not chasing those revenues to make your budget at that point in time. So that's a direction that's drilled down from the CEO's position, and I'll take responsibility for that. And based on over projections is what gets you in trouble. You can always control expenses. You can't control revenues. I think that's an important fact.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you, Tarak. And we'll move on to OPP, and I believe Marc Gagnon, you're doing that one?
No, I'll turn it over to our treasurer. We're
Oh.
keeping him busy.
Way to go, Mark. Yeah.
Yes. So OPP, for this year, 2020, you will notice that we've got a shortfall, net shortfall after expense of paid to OPP of $69,000, which and we planned or budgeted $72,000, so with a difference of $3,000. So basically, what happens here is for the revenues, the majority of the user fee revenues, that's it's $254 per household. That generates $635,000, and the expenses related to the OPP contract is $712,000. So right now, there's only a portion of the population or the residents that are paying into OPP. We are proposing for next year, for 2021, we'll just talk about the expenses. There's a reduction for the contract of $27,000. Even with that, there's a shortfall of $44,000. We wanted to expand the OPP levy to include the vacant properties. There's 719 vacant properties in the municipality, and we are proposing a levy of 1/3 the value of the fees per household, which would equate to about $82.50 per vacant property. There's still OPP. There may be a reduction or reduced OPP presence for vacant lots, but they still are patrolled and they still are occupied to a certain extent. So we are proposing to expand the fee to include the vacant properties.
Any questions?
To have a net of zero, sorry.
So by expanding that to the vacant lots, is that going to cause a decrease to the others?
Yes,
So
there's a small decrease
okay.
from $254.47 to $247.75. So it's about a decrease of about $6 per household.
And then we pick up from the vacant lots, which we should have been doing all the time.
Yes. So by doing this way, every time there's a reduction in OPP fees or an increase, the rate is adjusted on a yearly basis. I think that $254.47 has been there since inception, I believe, Mark.
Yeah.
So right now, by having the vacant lots excluded, and if we have a deficit, that deficit is subsidized by the general levy.
Okay. I have Dean and then Randy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a lot right next to our house property that presently is vacant, although I have now given the lot to my daughter. And there really is no such thing as given according to our CRA, but nevertheless, they're going to build a house on it this year coming. And so I'm not sure whether it would be considered a vacant lot this year or not. If I still owned it, I'd be protesting a little bit on property owners who might have one lot. I can understand the rationale for putting a fee on lots that are in subdivisions that have never been developed, and especially those where we're maintaining a road in those subdivisions and et cetera, et cetera. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. So putting a fee on those vacant lots is probably not a bad idea. But for someone who owns a lot, for whatever reason, I'm paying a lot of taxes or have been on that vacant lot even. Especially because it's waterfront and based on the assessment on it. So, but anyway, for the subdivision lots that are vacant, I guess it's something we should have done a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. I have Randy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question to Mark Fleury or Mark Gagnon is also in the future, can we consider with this increased lots that people are using for recreation? I mean, we have empty lots that have trailers parked on them, people vacationing there and don't want to spend the money for a full cabin, so that because of the tax burden. And they are receiving full service practically. And so to classify that as an empty lot is kind of hard, but you can't also tax it as a full owned property because there's just a trailer park there. The perfect example is in Alvin, right across from the community center. There's a trailer there with a garage. Fella's up there most of the summer, and he's probably paying empty lot rate or very close to it.
You want me to take that one, Mark? Or?
Well, all I can say is that our data for properties comes from MPAC. It's very difficult to go lot to lot to see who occupies it or not. So all the data is from MPAC. Household data and also vacant lot data is from MPAC properties.
And maybe just to add to that, if I may, we're all aware that we're moving forward with the process of the trailer licensing bylaw, so that will be coming into force. So there are fees adjusted for that. So as you can see, staff is trying to get creative on how to address some of these areas for additional revenues. Keep in mind, though, we're doing that, but we can't make profits with it. It's to substitute the actual expenses. So just as a footnote.
Yeah. I have Randy again.
That just basically answered the question. I was going to say we can track it through the new trailer bylaw, and trailers registered would then, if we were to cross-reference that on a vacant lot and go, hey, you know, like this lot's empty, but yet there's trailer parked on it. So anyhow, thank you.
All right, Renee.
Well, I just want to say, I like the fact that our revenues and expenses comes out to zero. They are equal this year. So it looks that the full amount will be covered by the revenues, right? Am I correct?
Yes, yes, you are correct.
So that I think is a bonus for all of us, since we don't have to, you know, put in any extra for that. So good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions with regards to the fees? Seeing none, we'll move on to protection inspection. Yes.
So
no?
I'll start with this one, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
And I know Kevin's on, so he's listening, but the majority of the changes here have to do with HR, was part of the recommendations that we discussed December 3rd. So you'll see that we spent a little bit more in 2020 on salaries as we spent more time doing bylaw enforcement and COVID-related issues in monitoring. But we did recuperate that amount of money in rebuilding shared services. So you're seeing in 2021 an amount of $70,000, which incorporates our regular half bylaw enforcement officer, and also incorporates a position of bylaw enforcement, which we want to use to do additional and regular bin enforcements, not just Monday to Friday, but 7 days a week is the plan. We have to understand too that very shortly we'll have to start the education process and information process once the new travel trailer licensing bylaw comes into force. So that'll drive some additional requests at that point in time. The one thing that I found and that staff found, and although we try to meet our minimum requirements to address complaints under bylaw or complaints under zoning, we are lagging a little bit behind. By having this additional person, it will help us react to situations a little quicker and be able to address dog issues a little bit more frequently. So it's an increase in HR, but there's adjoining services, additional services that are going to be provided to the community in terms of addressing things a little bit more in a quicker fashion. And also, the main crunch of this is trying to reduce the amount of time spent by Public Works in picking up bulk waste at the bins. and also trying to address the situation that we have with contaminated waste in the form of education and in the form of enforcement. Part of this endeavor will be also to communicate and work with the commercial industry in trying to educate them and teach them to, when using their bins, to not use them and dump all of their recycling in order to save the life expectancy of our landfills. So that's the major crunch of the increase in terms of expenses being proposed. They're fairly the same as in 2020. And I think the other thing is the bylaw enforcement truck amortization has been also incorporated within this budget. Unless Kevin would like to add something, I know Kevin is listening as well.
Kevin, do you want to add something before I turn it over to questions? I don't hear Kevin. All right, so I have Rick and then I have Randy.
Yeah, he's Mark pretty much covered everything.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Rick?
Hi, thank you. Just a quick question here. So with the extra position that's going to oversee the bins and that, have we incorporated the fact that they're going to be able to issue tickets, or are we still on the fence with that? I think because that's going to be a big part of basically deterring people if they're going to get fined for. I know education is one thing, but I mean it's not going to be it's not going to be the savior of the issues that we have.
So if I may, through you, Madam Mayor, and Kevin, please join in if you want. Basically, the plan is to review our bylaw for landfill and landfill materials, and hopefully create fines that the bylaw enforcement officers, and what we're proposing is not just a general person, but a legal person, just like Kevin, who has the same powers to be able to ticket at that point in time when they find people contravening the bylaws at the bins.
I have Randy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to ask quickly about the Pet Save Stray Cat program that we've back in 2019, I guess, entered into an agreement with Pet Save. We spend $5,500 a year to have them remove stray cats. At one time, it was quite a severe problem, but we didn't get a report last year, of course, COVID, for 2020. How many cats have they actually removed, and how much work are they actually doing for this $5,500? And at what point can we consider the cat problem under control?
From my last conversation, and I do apologize, due to COVID, we haven't followed up with it. The last count that they provided us was over 60 cats that were removed. The main cost in the agreement that we had was in the neighborhood of $50 a cat, and that's mainly to pay for the neutering and the fixing of the cats once they get to the Pet Save program. I didn't receive any invoicing for 2020. I do know, however, it did occur, hence why we didn't remove it from the budget line item. But based on the information that were provided to us by I forget her name at Pet Save, the issue takes years to resolve, Randy, and for the amount of money that we're putting into and the volunteers that are performing the work, I think it's a valuable service to keep in place.
Randy?
Yeah, actually, again, thanks, Madam Mayor. I believe you're right. It is a valuable service. Just want to make sure the ratepayers are receiving value for money. Can we receive the 2020 report then from Pet Save before the final budget is proposed? Can we ask them to propose how their service has gone in the past year then, please?
Absolutely, we'll have that ready for you.
Any other questions? Renee?
Just a comment. I know that just this week alone, one lady brought back 3 cats yesterday that, well, the mother had 3 kittens, so brought those 4 cats to Pet Save just yesterday alone, one of the volunteers. Last week, there was another 2 brought in. So just in the last week, that's 6 cats in the area that are out there in the cold. So I think it's they give us a great service. We're lucky to have PetSafe there. And it helps us not having to go out there and do this, right? Because of all the volunteers. So that's all I have to say.
Dean, did you have your finger up?
Yeah, I probably missed it, Madam Mayor, but the $59,000 deficit that's on this screen here that we're proposing, how's that going to be? Are we taking that money out of reserves, or where's the money coming for that?
It comes from a little bit all over the place within the budget. Basically what staff did is where we were able to find savings, we reduced costs and implemented in areas that we needed to increase costs. So it's not just related to the general actual department. We looked at it as a globally and how we can maneuver all of these things to end up in the results that we do at the end of the day.
So Mark, will that be the way we continue, or is at some point do we balance the budget on this protection, inspection, and building permits and so forth?
So my philosophy in terms of protection, which is basically your bylaw services, we will never be able to make it cost recovery 100%, just because of the sheer time, energy, and force and how the ticketing system works, because any tickets issued are transferred to the general court services out of North Bay, which technically we usually budget 5,000 in revenue in OPPs, but this year it's zero because actually there may be a deficit in terms of how things are being operated. So it's very difficult to gear ourselves towards a break even at this point in time. Building services, it's totally different. Those, and as you can see on the next page, we can talk about, those are getting closer to being cost recovery.
Thank you.
All right, no further questions. Let's move on to the next slide then. And emergency, who's it?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, Marc Fleury will talk about emergency services.
Mark, I'm not sure if you wanted to speak about building permits. That was on the previous slide.
Oh, was it on the?
Yes, it was on the bottom of the slide.
I apologize. Let's go back to the previous slide, building permits. Now I know where Councillor Dean's question came from. I apologize. So in terms of 2020, you see an increase of what projected revenues are, and that's directly related. In 2020, we started using the services of an administrative assistant at the municipality to assist administratively in the building department, thus being able to charge back some of those wages back to the shared services agreement. So you'll see that we received in actuals $109,000 in revenues, of which was reported last night 85,000 in building fees, and the balance is basically chargebacks for salaries. You'll also notice in expenses, it was increased to 123 was our actual out of the 112. A lot had to do in terms of the additional bylaw enforcement that was generated because of COVID and monitoring, but then we charged that back and received the additional revenues that you saw in the protection and inspection control. In terms of the 2021 budget, we're budgeting again $55,000 in building permits. Hopefully we receive more, which is always nice for development within our area. And we're also incorporating the chargeback for the administrative assistant of somewhere around $30,000. So you see the total increase of revenues of just over $31,000. And the expenses were increased by the amount of administrative assistant wages being charged to building by the same amount, which leaves us with an increase of $2,000 overall from what we projected in building permits and inspection services from 2020. So with the 112,000 that we pay into the shared services will be increased to 114, and it's just maneuvering the wages from the administrative assistants from general government back into building permits and inspections.
All right, let's move on to the next one. And Mark Fleury, are you taking on?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. For emergency measures, for operations, we have a regular budget of $5,000. Luckily or unluckily, we didn't we didn't have any. We had funding for the emergency that for COVID emergency. So we had an expense of $1,500. So non-COVID related. So a variance of $3,000, and we're proposing still having a base budget of $5,000 for emergency for next year. For projects that's related directly to COVID funding, Safe Restart funding, we received $313,000, and there's some lost revenues that are debited in the revenues here, which nets out to $279,000. And there's expenses related to COVID for $25,000, which is generates a surplus of $253,000, which will all be transferred to reserves at year end. For next year's budget, 2021, we received additional funding for 2021 for COVID Safe Restart funding of $63,000, and we're forecasting expenses of $63,000 to have a net of zero. Again, the $63,000, if we don't spend it all in next year, the difference will be transferred to reserves for future years.
So the government didn't impose any use it or lose it year, right?
No, they understand that COVID is not a yearly problem. They know that there's going to be expenses, ongoing expenses, and we receive funding. It's a joint federal provincial funding for all municipalities.
Okay. Renee?
So the camera, the plexiglass, all that would come out of the COVID startup money that we received?
The camera, are you talking about the council audiovisual?
Yeah, for the council chambers, because I mean, in order to proceed, we can't.
We got clarification on these funds. These are only for operational expenses, not for capital. And council audiovisual is capital, so we're able to use the modernization fund that was deferred from previous years to fund the council upgrades. So we didn't at the beginning. We thought that we could use the COVID funds for council, and we cannot. It has to be operational pressures, expense pressures, or lost revenues. Notwithstanding, the council audiovisual are funded. We're not dipping into reserves to fund that project.
No, I understand that, but I mean, operational, we still, we can't meet in publicly because we don't have the proper thing. So, but I get the capital,
yes,
and
yes,
I understand.
They have different funding for capital. They wanted the Safe Restart just for being operational. There's other envelopes, like there's resilience funding. We proposed funding for capital under that envelope. We'll get results in the next month or so. So there's different envelopes. That's how they are. They structure. When there's federal government involved, there's a lot of. They're very strict in terms of criteria for funding or spending. Sorry.
If I could, Madam Mayor, just to join into the conversation. Ultimately, the council upgrades is because the ulteriorly end result is we wanted to continue the access to the public through our web diffusion. So part of the reason was not just COVID related, but also future communication with our general public through the internet. So there's a fine line in trying to make the argument one or the other. We had a substantial fund in the modernization, which fell within that envelope, which how we decided to make use of it. And the other thing that we can make use of these funds as was explained earlier, I think if there's pressures on bylaw because of future orders that we need to enforce, we can dip into that to offset some of those expenses. For council's information, we did spend additional funds to assist some of our employees to work from home, to be more productive with screens, keyboards, those types of things. Additional plexiglass that we're still waiting for at the landfill will be addressed, and the additional cleaning of some of our facilities once we reopen can all be addressed to these pressures as operating. So, and the loss of revenues. Don't keep in mind that the arena has been closed since January. Probably will not open until mid to end of February, maybe closed permanently for the year, who knows. So there are losses of revenues that can be attributed to that.
Any further questions with regards to this budget? Dean.
Just a comment. I noticed that 63,000 is made up of two items. There's 20, and I'm looking at the budget document, and there's 43,000 says contracted services, which I presume you mean generally to be that cleanup work and that sort of thing in the arena, and that would qualify for that sort of thing. But I couldn't help but think a contracted service would help the public a lot after COVID here to do something with that beach. Be just about the right amount.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, then we're into Public Works. Ooh, I believe Martin is on somewhere.
Yes, I am.
Oh, there you are. Let's see your face.
So just a prelude, as you're all aware, Bob is off for a little bit now, so we're going to incorporate the manager of Public Works, Martin, to present the budget on behalf of Bob as the operation director, and then we'll ask Kevin to do his landfill presentation as well. So have fun, Martin, and off you go.
Good day, thank you. As everyone who doesn't know, my name is Martin, and I'm the manager of Public Works. So for our budget this year, you'll notice that we have a couple more expenses that we're planning for. We've increased our budget by, or asking for at least 125,000 above and beyond of last year, mostly maintained by a new Public Works employee, as well as a couple more vehicle repairs and maintenance repairs. Those are the big add-ons for this year. When it comes to total or project revenues, we have a couple projects on the go this year. So we're having $20,000 added for the modernization fund that has been previously spoken of today, for something that's in the capital. So we'll get to that in a bit, as well as $100,000 hopefully going towards the Public Works shop to basically increase our office size, as well as lunchroom for the Public Works, the men there, because COVID basically is restricting us on our lunch time, more or less. So our lunchroom is not adequate for the size it needs to be, and that's where those funds will be going. Any questions on our overall operations?
I have Randy. You're muted, Randy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had seen somewhere in here recently that you're purchasing a trailer for the lawn maintenance.
If I can interject, that's a Parks and Recreation project, Randy. We'll talk about that later on.
I lost it. That's why. Thank you.
That's okay. Not a problem.
Other questions with regards to Public Works? I have Rick, and then I have Dean, and then I have Randy.
All right, thank you. Through you. So I'm just looking at our notes there. So page 13 and 14. So this is the whole summary. That's what this relates to, correct? So if I'm looking at, just looking at my notes here. So if I'm looking at the whole of the Public Works operations, the proposed budget is about 2.4 million. Back in 17, it was about 1.3 $1.84 million. So we got about a 31% increase over the last 5 years. This is just the operations portion of it. And I know that we're adding a new position this year, which accounts for about what, 60 some $1,000s, I believe. So my question is why would we have such a big increase over several years? And even from last year, the increase is about 10.5%.
Mark, I don't know if you wanted to jump in on that.
Absolutely. So through the years, there's been increased costs in materials and repairs. We also last year, if you remember, we added a position again. So that complement now of frontline workers comes to 9. For council's information, we spent approximately $65,000 in overtime in 2020. Not all related to public works. There's quite a bit related to the landfill, which we'll discuss after because of what we're proposing there. And the other issue that we're having because we wanted to increase the complement is our heavy duty mechanic wasn't doing mechanic work 100% of the time because he was always filling in the gaps for the other employees to cover for holidays and or cover for back time or call-ins. So this will give him the ability to maintain our fleet regularly and up to standard at all times. Will assist in reduce some of the overtime attributed to things not related to winter maintenance, because winter maintenance we just can't get away from. Mind you, this year has been easier than others. I think the large increase is winter control was a big change from 2017 and moving forward. We had some big jumps in those budget items like $50,000, $60,000 because at one point I think we were budgeting under $100,000 for winter sand and winter control. As you see, those line items have crept up to 150 and 100. And now we've sort of capped them to that because we're able to set aside some winter maintenance reserves to be able to address those issues. So by increasing the complement, so we're trying to be more productive, or not more productive, but more consistent because we did have operational issues during the summer months. So that should resolve those issues and should resolve the call-ins for overtime to replace some of the individuals. So not sure if it answers your question 100%, but the other factor is diesel prices at one time really went high. If you recall, in late 2016 and 2017, we were paying close to $1.30 a liter. Those have substantiated a little bit, but as you can see, they're starting to creep up again. So just to give you some ideas of the reasons and rationale behind it, and then your amortization as you're improving your equipment, which council has done quite a bit of since 2015. Those amortization rates also creep up a little bit.
Thank you. So just to follow up, so let's say from about 4 years ago, there would be how many more new positions in Public Works?
2.
Okay, thank you.
I have next on the list, Dean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My questions or my concerns, I guess, are a bit similar to Rick's. And I talked about this with the mayor before we had these meetings, because when I first looked at the budget document, there is a proposal to increase our manpower by 2 people. And it really concerns me that we're getting this growth in our employees, because I think it's showing no end, but I don't think we don't have any more roads. I don't know whether we're actually doing more work in a year that require more manpower, or just what the reason is. I hear things like Mark just said, well, the mechanic should be doing more mechanical work, but on the other hand, we seem to be getting by even though he wasn't doing it all. So I guess my concern is that we seem to have been very efficient this past year. We did our roads work. We've done our public works work. I just can't help but question the need to increase our labor force. And I'm worried about going up 2 people. That's a big percentage of our total labor force. And although the mayor felt there was justification because we're going to be looking at new work that we're not doing now, or we hopefully might even recover some of the costs of new manpower by stopping the business of having to send our people out to the bin sites to clean up all the time. So I understand some of that, but efficiencies I like to see, and efficiencies usually come with mechanics or better data or better equipment or whatever it may be. But once we have taken new employees on, we don't very often ever get rid of any. And this continual growth over a period of years becomes very expensive, more and more expensive. And so I just want to register a concern about this. And if it doesn't do any good for our budget, our discussions today, maybe it will at least be giving our budget people, our department people, reason to think next year, if they're thinking we need somebody else to do this, well, do we? So I'll leave it with that. I've registered my concern over this, and I would hope that our CAO and our public works people will understand where I'm coming from and think about this as we go into the future.
Mark, I know you want to respond.
Yeah, it just, I completely understand, Dean, and these decisions in bringing these recommendations forward don't come lightly. We've toyed with this internally substantially because we do realize the cost impact, and we wouldn't be putting it forward unless we know we can maintain it. I can assure you, as long as I'm here, I'm going to be more than happy with the adjustments made and proposals made this year that we are set in terms of labor force moving forward in the future. I've always said that there was a little bit of a shortfall in public works, and we just needed to find the opportune time to be able to start introducing, but having that complement in place should be no further need for increases either there in public works and or in enforcement services. So I can assure council that these recommendations were well thought out and to ensure that we can manage going forward based on our concept of trying to keep a reasonable tax rate going from now. But you shouldn't see a request for new employees in the future anytime soon.
Thank you. I have next on the line, I have Randy and then followed by Rick. I think I saw your hand go up again, Rick. Okay, Randy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a quick question about the street sweeping. I saw last year we had levied for 38,000 and spent 20. The previous year 31, and we're trying to stick around that 30. Why did we come in so short last year? I know that I felt the quality of the sweeping work probably wasn't as good as the year previous, and that was our decision. I think we changed contractors through the year when we chose this street sweeping thing, but there was quite a drop off from the actual estimated amount to what we spent, and I'm just wondering what the justification or reasoning for that was.
Mark,
if I may.
I'll let Martin answer that one. I'm sure he knows the answer.
So this past year, we had done a lot of road construction, especially in Alvin. So when you're looking at things such as Dry Pine Bay Road, Whippoorwill, White Pine Lane, Léger, Presqu'île, we ended up scarifying a good 5, 6, 7 kilometers of road. So being that said, we didn't actually need to use $38,000 worth of street sweeping. we ended up using the same company as well. So the quality of work, it was the same company. We just didn't have as much road to sweep.
Randy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So that being said, then, if we only spent $20,000 and we can suggest strongly that that deduction was due to having less road to clean, does it not make more sense then, instead of budgeting, say, $10,000 above last year's cost, to perhaps 5,000? I understand there may be a small increase due to cost of living and fuel and such, but I think we're overestimated considerable then if we don't expect to come above 20,000 too far, because we're doing less roads. To me, that makes sense.
Mark?
And I'll jump in on this, is because it's a one-time yearly thing. And I'll give you a perfect example. If we reduce that cost, then we can't do whippoorwill cleaning this year. As a result of whippoorwill being resurfaced, then the sweeping comes back into effect as it was in the past. So there'll be exchanges back and forth. So basically what Martin was explaining, the roads that were due for capital improvements that are in phase one, they didn't need sweeping for the first year. We will be resurfacing those roads this year in the road capital budget. Thus far, the sweeping will be coming back. So it's just a matter of projects here and there. So yes, you will see dips up or down, but at least we're being consistent in budget-wise in presentations, so that we're not always dipping up and down.
Next, I'll let Rick go, and then Randy, I'll come back to you.
It's fine.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify. So earlier when I asked the question about the increase over a period of time, it wasn't a concern or critique. It was more of a clarification wanted from my part. And having said that, I must say that I disagree with the fact that adding another person is not a good thing. If we go back to last year's winter, we had crews that were going from bin trucks to doing road cleaning back and forth, and weren't able to. So one crew was basically suffering because they had to go on the other crew. So adding one person, I think, is great, and we've been discussing that for the last 2 years, is to be more efficient in the services rendered. So if the increase of one person will do that more effectively, I'm all for it. So just wanted to say it wasn't a critique, more of a clarification. Thanks.
Randy, did you have something else?
Yeah, I was just going to go back to the street sweeping again, and this will fall under brushing as we come to that too, I'm certain. We have a price per kilometer on this street sweeping. We know how many kilometers are hard surface this year, and it would be more functional to attach a cost of living increase, or like a 2% increase, 3% increase based on the kilometers we currently have that will be cleaned this year. The number doesn't fluctuate. We know how much hard surface we have, and we have a per kilometer price based on last year with a slight inflationary increase, and then go from there, rather than attacking a 10%, like a $10,000 increase without, you're ballparking it. That would be my only concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Renee?
So the only thing for me is we have applied for grants, and if we don't get these grants, do we take that money out of the reserves?
Or
Well, the grants here, Public Works the building upgrade and then there's building upgrades to the Public Works.
I believe we have those, right, Mark?
No, it was submitted. We're hoping to receive confirmation in the next month. So hopefully we have confirmation prior to our final budget approval, and then that'll be a discussion in terms of where council wants to go. We were trying to take advantage of every opportunity of funding made available to us to address issues that we had with our employees. So two things can happen. We can delay the project until we get funding. We can hopefully get the funding, invest our portion into the repairs into the Public Works building, or as a council, we decide to do the full project anyways at 100% our cost and amortize it over time.
And can we take that out of the modernization money that we have left? Would
I
that
would
be an
have,
option?
I would have to confirm that, Renee, first.
Okay. Because I mean, technically, the way it is right now, they
Technically,
can't.
it is a capital project, so so we can't use the COVID funding. The modernization fund, I'd have to look at the details. I can't give you that particular answer right away.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we're fairly confident that we should be successful, and once we do receive confirmation, we will definitely let council know.
Because there is no way with all the COVID measures, they can't even be more than one person in the lunchroom or even in the office space, right? I believe.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We're running
Can't be
into
6 feet apart.
yeah, we're running into issues, and that's why we brought the project forward.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? All right, let's move on to the next section. Martin, are you taking that one on?
Yes, for capital for Public Works. So as you can see on the PowerPoint, we have a few projects there coming up this year. So first and foremost, we have our capital road rehabilitation that we'd like to see $600,000. That project, that money would be allocated to a few roads coming up this year. So mainly the resurfacing of most of the roads that we done last year. So you're looking at Presqu'île, Léger, Dry Pine Bay Road, White Pine Lane, Pine Ridge Road, and we're looking at to resurface the final portion of Brousseau that hasn't been resurfaced yet. After a couple of years ago, we did re-graveled it. We just didn't finish it off yet. So the pavers come in, we're going to finish the job. And the last road that we'd like to do this year would be Prévost, is what I'd like to fix that one up. It's got a bunch of soft spots that we want to fix up. As for, if we continue down the line, we have our roads rehab for La Brosse Road. So last year it was deferred. There was, we'll call it a drainage issue that was unresolved. And so we had to speak with a bunch of property owners to try to get a new ditch installed. And basically one property owner ended up selling their property, and then we had to wait for the new owner to come, and it was just a big mess. So it was ended up being deferred to this year. Next project, we have our sidewalks. Our sidewalks are in need of repair, and there's a few spots. So for this year, we're looking at refixing the front of La Paroisse Saint-David in Noëlville. It's our worst area, so we'll fix that whole area. The next project we have is the Mesh Go Evo Asset Management Program. That is it's a computer program, and what it does is basically does everything more or less. But what you're looking at is automation of paperwork. So there'd be no more paperwork. Everything would be done digitally. It tracks our vehicle, tracks our work orders, tracks just tracks basically. It's very nice. It also helps interdepartmental. So if Public Works or Parks and Rec or Landfill need a specific piece of equipment, you could also ask. You can like, it's hard to explain there, but basically you can put dibs on pieces of equipment. So like, I need the backhoe a week from now. I'll get that in advance, and then we can prepare our stuff so nobody's stepping on anybody's toes. So everybody knows what's going on. And it does basically anything I'd like it to. It's very, very customizable. Is the word I'm looking for. The next capital purchase would be the backhoe plow with wings. So currently our backhoe plows the majority of our parking lots within the municipality. So Public Works Yard, the municipal office, the arena, the fire department, the library, and we currently just have a straight plow on it. And basically with the plow with wings, it's like a box plow, but the wings can move. So what ends up happening is that you can control where your snow is going, and you don't get what's the word I'm looking for, like an overage of snow. So you can direct the snow where you want it to go, and it should save our operator at least an hour every snowfall. So that'll be the faster we get one road done or one parking lot done, the faster we can get to the next. Then we have the Public Works building upgrades, which is Mark, if you can jump in, that comes with the grant, I believe.
Yes, it is the proposed COVID resilience funding that we are anticipating an answer within the next month or two of 100 grand, 60,000 financed by reserves.
And finally, we have our streetlights. We have a proposal of 5 streetlights, I believe. So our plan for the municipality is to have every road connected to a major highway, so Highway 535 or Highway 64, having a light at the intersection. So for this upcoming year, we're looking at Netam, Thackeray, Sucker Creek, and Harmony Point to be added to the list. And that's all I have, if there are any questions.
Thank you, Martin. Any questions or comments for Martin? I don't see Bob on my picture list. So Bob, if you have something, you'll have to shout out so I can hear you, okay? Because somehow you disappeared. So seeing no comments, let's move on to the next. Oh, sorry, Mark.
No problem. I just think it's important to note, just for the general public who may be paying attention, is the road program that council approved for a five-year ongoing road program. We are setting aside $600,000 a year. So Martin mentioned the roads that'll be under construction for 2021, but we have a list of another significant amount of roads. Once we get into the public presentation, we'll certainly share that document, but that's a document that all of council received earlier this week as well.
Dean, did you have okay, go ahead, Dean.
Just a quick question on that backhoe plow needing the wings. And I'm just kind of wondering, when the backhoe is finished, when that tractor is finished, the wings and the plow go on the next one?
Yes, it's just an attachment. So we're gonna put it on the front loader if we wanted to, or a backhoe. It's just another attachment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Seeing none, we'll move on to Environmental Services Landfill. And I see Kevin is here with us.
Hey, Madam Mayor. Hi, my name's Kevin Benvenuti. I'm the new Environmental Services Manager. Today, I'm just going to run through the key highlights of the Environmental Services Department, the landfill side of it anyway. I believe Mark Gagnon is going to run through the sewer system. So we're looking at for 2021, we have 102,700 in revenues, 19,900 variance. For expenses, we have 908,881, as opposed to the 2020 budget 2020 was 91,162. The variance is 157,596, and we'll run through some of the details of why this is going to happen, or why we're proposing it to happen. So we start on revenues. The big adjustment here is we are changing the landfill tipping fees from 30,000 to 50,000, just for historical data, because we're always around $50,000 in revenue at the landfill site. So we're going to move that up. The other revenues come from commercial bins, curbside pickup, the couple places we do it, Stewardship Ontario, all our recycling programs, our sales scrap steel, and both of those, the Stewardship Ontario stuff paid out really good this year, and our scrap steel was way up just due to the market. It is so fluctuating in both of those, so we never really know what's going to happen until the year of. And then for if we move down to salaries, wages, and benefits, it is up $80,000 due to a new position for a full-time operator. and health benefits and the cost of living increase that's coming up in 2021. Any questions so far? Am I talking too fast?
No, you're going fine.
Okay. And then once we move down a little further, we got quite an increase in the solid waste disposal contracted services, just due to the fact we're going from 2020 was 80,000. This year we're proposing 180,000. It's $100,000 increase, just because of our one-time cost for engineering, for our environmental assessment, for our expansion, for our expansion of the second and third cells. So that is for just engineering costs. And also $40,000 for post-closure costs were moved from the line below. So it's just a mixed match of, it's just getting moved up a line. So it looks like that line is bigger than it is. And if we move down to the next line, recycling contracted diversion is, it's deducted the 40,000 that we were just talking about in the line above. Other than that, we have a reduction in telecommunications just for the new internet service of 2,500. Our hydro costs were way down because at the landfill site, we switched to a propane boiler system for our heat instead of space heaters. So that's saving a lot in hydro. And also, I believe the rates have all changed this year. So if we go down to, we were very low on the environmental committee. I believe that's just COVID. Meetings weren't allowed to go. So I hope that kicks back up with the care community this year. Hopefully soon. We're working on that. And so if we move down, and then we have for amortization expenses, maybe Mark could speak to that, why that's up 21,000.
It's related to the dozer that we just purchased before year end. $200,000 over 10 years is about $20,000 amortization. So it's basically because of the dozer.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And for projects this year, we don't have any. We just finished up all of our small communities fund. And the only grant we are working on this year is the waste management study, but that was the cost for last year. So it's all zero for 2021 as of right now. And that's pretty much it for that.
Thank you. I see Randy, Rick on the list. Randy, go ahead. You're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Kevin, there's obviously probably a cost savings on the environmental engineering costs on cell 2 and 3 to do them at the same time. Is that why we're preparing both for that study at this point rather than doing just cell 2?
I think Mark wants to answer this one. He's got his hand up.
Yeah, it's basically, if you recall during our discussions of December 3rd and my prelude to this afternoon's discussions is we have an outstanding environmental assessment that hasn't been completed yet. And hiring the engineer to bring this to a closure, to authorize the expansion that was originally envisioned by our forefathers, that will generate an additional 26 years of capacity at the landfill, plus the 14 years that we have now, would give us 40 years of capacity. So we did get an estimate of the engineers, so we were pretty firm on that. We're still going to go out to tender, but I think it's vitally important to concentrate on that EA, because we can't expand without the environmental assessment being completed. So that's the push, because 14 years is getting a little bit too close for my comfort level.
Randy, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Mark, for that. That was my question. Have we had an estimate at this point? And I'm glad to see that we've reached out and had a close estimate on those costs. And yes, I was just curious, is it necessary to do both? And you've answered that, so thank you so much.
Okay, I have Rick next.
Hi there, thank you. Just a follow-up, I guess, to that. So I just find that I had written some notes even before the question was asked by Randy, but isn't $100,000 engineering cost quite a bit? And isn't there any possible savings there somewhere for looking for either better quotes or anyway, that's the question.
So, if I may, Madam Mayor and Kevin, I'll jump in. So technically, the assessment and engineering is 60,000. The remaining costs are well monitoring fees that we pay on a regular yearly basis, and the preparation of our yearly reports that need to be submitted to the Ministry of Environment. So the increase is technically 60,000 that we're talking about, and not 100,000. The 40,000 or the 100,000 that you're looking at is our post-closure costs that were moved from one account up to the next account for better reporting purposes from our treasurer. Does that answer your question, Councillor Richard?
Sure, thanks.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Kevin. And we will move on to the next one, which is health services. And what Mark is taking it. Which Mark? I'm not sure.
Mark F.
Mark F. Okay, Mark F.
Thank you. We're talking sewer now.
Oh, source. Did we say?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
Health.
yes.
Yes, it's sewer.
Sorry.
Okay, if we look at the 2020 results, we have a budget, a net zero budget, net result budget of zero for 2020, and we spent a little bit less on the Aqua contract or the excess expenses related to the contract. So we have a operating surplus of $19,709 for 2020. We'll go through 2021, and then we have we have a proposal to make for 2021. The way it's written now is we have an increase of for revenues. We have an increase of $25 per household. So the fee would be from $350 to $375 per household for the sewer services. So the resulting revenues would be $109,025. You will notice there's a reduction in the connection and frontage budgets, budgeted revenues. These connection and frontage were for a period of 20 years, and they ended in 2019. So last year in 2020 they were budgeted. It just we just missed it by 1 year. So this year these revenues are zero. For the expenses, we have the Aqua, we have practically the same expenses as last year, $131,000. So for a deficit of $22,000, $160. There's a requirement that the sewer system has to be self-financed by the users. So we are proposing this year in 2020, the surplus, that $19,709, to transfer it to a dedicated reserve fund for sewer. And that fund would be, because we have to net out to zero, that fund, if there's a surplus 1 year, it would be deferred to the following year. So if we create a surplus this year, we could help finance a big portion of the deficit for this year, and we could reduce the Aqua contract budget by a few $1,000s, so we'd have a net budget of zero. The net effect would be that the whole budget would be financed by the users, so that $22,160 would not be financed by the general levy. By doing this, we would reduce the taxes by $22,000, so the resulting tax increase would go from 2.49% to 2.04% if we proceeded this way.
Okay.
I hope, Mark, I explained myself correctly.
Absolutely perfect.
Okay.
Okay. So what we're looking at then is having the users pay off the deficits or put the deficit. So if there is a surplus, then it would go back to the users eventually. Right?
Yes.
So it always comes out at zero.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, and that 25, I just want to make sure I get it first. That $25 will offset the increase, right? For them? Or they, well, will offset the deficit. That's what the.
Exactly. We increased the revenues by about $7,400. But even with that increase of revenues, there's a deficit. There's a deficit for the year, and we would use the surplus of the previous year to finance or help finance the deficit of the current year. If we did not have that reserve, then we'd have to increase the fees to cover the shortfall.
Right, and by doing it that way, the deficit then is not put on the general public, just on the user, correct?
Exactly. The users would finance 100% of the system.
Okay.
And not the non-users. Yes.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yes.
First, before I turn it over, I have Randy.
To you, Madam Mayor, I was just going to say, looking back through that line for that $25 increase year over year, the generated income has actually been drifting downwards, and it hasn't been increased in quite a long time. So just for the public watching, the rate's been kind of steady, I think, for a long while, and perhaps, you know, although it's a small increase in a tough time for everybody, it's warranted to help maintain the system. So
Mark?
Yeah, just to add to those comments, Randy is absolutely right. The last time we made an adjustment was in 2017. And knowing what we see going forward in the future, I rather do small increments and create that reserve fund, as was recommended by Mark, to address future impacts to the users. We do have 278 units, and I say units because there are residents or commercial establishments that have 2 fees, depending on what the setup is. So that's the plan going forward, and that's the recommendation we're putting forth.
I have Rick.
Thank you. Just a clarification, Mark Footy, our treasurer, a while ago stipulated about adding the extra $25, and it would reduce the deficit, the budget increase from 2.4 to 2.0 something. But isn't that already included into this in the calculation, which brings us to 2.49 anyway?
No, the actual 22,100, the deficit for 2021, the 22,160 was financed with the general levy, so it was part of the actual increase of 2.49. So the $22,000, 22,160 will become zero. So we will reduce the tax levy by $22,000, which equates to roughly almost 40 from 0.4%, 0.45%.
Other questions with regards to the sewers or comments? Seeing none, let's move on to the next one, which is.
We have a capital, sorry.
Oh, sorry, did I skip? Geez.
Yes, the capital for sewers is sewer lift stations and ramp upgrades for $35,000. This is a critical item that was noted by Aqua for the sewer. That needs to be done this year. That will be financed by reserves.
Okay. Questions? Okay. Did I miss anything else, Mark?
No, but we're on the same slide though.
Okay.
For drains, environmental services drains, these are the drains. So these are the municipal portion of the drains. So we have revenues, which is basically the grant that we receive to pay a portion of the superintendent of drains wages or fees. This is paid by the province. So we have a budget of 15,000 and we had actuals of 18,000 for the year. It fluctuates based on the amount of work that the drainage superintendent needs to do, and we're always 1 year behind in the payment. So we propose keeping the same budget at $15,000. For the expenses, we had a budget of $54,618 for, and then we have actuals of $24,027. So a variance of $30,591 for the year 2020. Just less work being done on the drains for the year. Again, this fluctuates, depends on the need and also the request by the landowners. If there's a request, we have to work on the drain, and this portion is the municipal portion of the drain only. The drain work, the work that is done on drains abutting property owners' lands are charged to the landowner. So the because of the we look at history and we reduce the expense by $10,000 for the municipal portion of the drains. So we propose a budget of $30,000 for contracted services, and we have the amortization expense of 14. So a total budget for expenses of $44,000. So basically a reduction of $10,000 for the budget.
Thank you. Questions regarding drains? Seeing none, let's move on to the next slide, right? So we're up to health services.
Yes.
And who's taking, are you taking?
I will take it. So the health services is the public health and ambulance service. Basically, for the revenues, it's a small, it's a helipad, it's a rental or a revenue of $3,500 per year. This remains, we receive that amount and it remains for next year. For expenses, these are direct payments to the public health, sub-re and districts, and also for DSAB on the ambulance portion of their billing. For public health, there was an increase of 5% in 2021 compared to 2020. And for DSAB, the increase is 0.05%. So we have an increase, total increase variance of $7,168 for the health. And you will notice that the $7,168 for DSAB, there was a little flip between health services and social and family services on the bottom, just by about $5,000 that was, we had to flip from one budget to the next. So basically there's no control over that budget. It's a payment, direct payment to the outside boards. For social and family services, that's related to social housing, Ontario Works, and childcare for DSAB. Again, we had a budget $432,000. Actuals for 27 is just a difference between the two health services of ambulance and social and family services. So there's a variance of 5,000. Basically, it's really zero. And the budget increase for next year is 0.05%. So the budget is $429,647.
Questions? Comments? None. Let's move on to the next one.
Cemeteries. Playing with three screens here. Again, the revenues, we have a budget of for the current year, we have a budget of 5,000. We have actuals of 14,792, so a variance of 9,792. Again, the revenues fluctuate on a yearly basis. I think in 2019, 2 years ago, there was a big jump for 26,000. There was a new columbarium, I believe. Yeah. So those revenues fluctuate. So, but based on history, we noticed that maybe 5,000 is a little low, so we increased it to 10,000. So an increase of 5,000. For the expenses, I mean, we had a budget of 6,600. We had actuals of 10,000. We kept the budget at the same rate. It's very difficult to estimate. Depends on the work being done on the cemeteries. Mm-hmm. So here we're increasing the revenue budget by $5,000 and leaving the expenses as is.
So the grass cutting and all that of the cemeteries, is that inside of Public Works, or is it budgeted separately here?
We do again for we take the timesheets and any work that the people from Public Works do for cemeteries, it gets charged back to this budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Going forward, we have a cemetery trust fund. We're hoping on using the interest to subsidize a portion of these fees, but it's very minimal. The interest rate is so low. Maybe we're looking at maybe $500-600 per year, but we're going to put that in place this year, 2021.
Questions regarding cemeteries? Seeing none, let's move on to recreation and cultural services. Mark?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll take this one on in the absence of Bob. So as you can see, this is a department that realized a lot of the revenue losses due to the COVID. So the shortfall in revenues from 2020 actual to 2020 budget are related to two issues. Approximately $15,000 related to user fees for rental of ice time, rental of halls, those types of revenues, and $30,000 attributed to revenues we didn't transfer over for the upgrades to the beach project in Alvin due to the fact that we were still waiting official land transfer permits from the Ministry of Municipal Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. Sorry. In terms of expenses, we had an increase in expenses, mostly related to how we were. Sorry, I'm just looking at my other notes here. Too many screens, like Mark said, going on. The increase had to do with how we were attributing wages. So part of that is accommodations and seasonal workers that were transferred over to Parks and Rec, and that revenues for students were taken into another department, and the actual costs were attributed to Parks and Recreation. And then if I keep going in terms of expenses, the variance related to, oh, that's projects, I'm sorry. Yeah, park materials was an increase. That being said, we still ended up overall being able to cover those pressures at that point in time. In terms of the 2021 budget, you'll see that we're decreasing the budget by $25,000 in revenues, mainly related to removing the $30,000 for the Alvin Park because it's been moved down to the projects section of the new budget format. And you're seeing we're increasing the expenses by $32,000 related to adjustments to the salaries, mainly to reattribute the proper salaries to the proper departments. We're not creating new positions. D, in case you're listening, it's just a readjustment to the proper departments as a whole. Materials, because again, we had a $35,000 expense, which was related to VA trails and the Alvin Beach. That's been moved down to a different account, so it comes out of the operations. And then some minor adjustments because again, the telecommunications project and the voice over IP projects, you'll see each department savings, and the savings here are about $2,500 and $500 respectively. And that basically gives you the explanation in terms of the changes in Parks and Rec. And under projects, this is a slew of projects, and maybe Mark can help me out with this one, is because we're starting to show some of the net zero stuff that the municipality does to assist groups in fundraising. So I'll turn it over to Mark to talk about the projects at this point in time.
For 2020, we tried to, because we're managing donations, restricted donations, we have to create different budgets to track these donations, making sure that they're spent on for eligible expenses. So if you look at the actuals of revenues for the 2020 year, we had $23,000 and 706 of revenues. The majority of this is donations. We have projects like Alban, Knights of Columbus. We have Micro Hatchery. We have other projects that are funded by donations mainly, and we have to account for these as projects, dedicated budgets, and the expenses 20,837. That's related to those projects. So basically, it's a net zero in most part. For the 2021 budget, you will notice in the revenues for council members, it's 98,355, and in your package you have 256,866, I believe. The difference is just related to the Alban Community Center project. It's the funding that we're in per proposal. Year one, it's a multi-year funding. And year one originally was scheduled for $271,000 of expenses. It's been downgraded to $54,840. Basically, that project or the by the time we get approval or not, it's going to be mid-year. And with COVID, everything's going to be slowed for the first year. So the project has been reduced. Notwithstanding this, there's no effect on the bottom line. So we're still working with the same tax increase, okay? So just to reassure council members and the public. So for 2021 budget, we have revenues of $98,355. That's basically, like I said, it's $40,000 related to the ICIP proposed funding for the Alban Community Center. And we have other projects like the Alban Community, Alban Beach, that is deferred to next year, the donations that we have on hand. And we also have the Micro Hatchery project that has to be deferred on a yearly basis. The actual net is deferred. So, and also that's for the revenues. For the expenses, again, most of our net zero. There's some additional expenses that are budgeted or proposed for next year. We have project for outdoor instruments, sound equipment, and a swing set as per council priorities for 2021 that was communicated in December. There's $20,000 there, or $20,000 and $3,000 for per diems for artists, also for outdoor musicians. There's also the Canada Day expenses. There's a grant, again, it's a proposal. We have a proposal for funding, and there's always an overage. If we don't get the funding, we'll have to reduce the events by the amount of funding that we don't get. But there's still a cost in the municipality, but we'll keep the same ratio. That's assuming, again, that there's going to be public gatherings permitted on Canada Day. So these are the for projects.
Hey,
Yes.
Randy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had 3 questions. The first one, Mark, the fish hatchery program hasn't been operational for a year from what I understand. And I don't think, talking to the principal there, that they're in a big hurry to refire it. Can you tell me what's going on and why they're still funding that account?
Which Mark are you?
Mark Fleury.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, those are just the leftover. This will be deferred on a yearly basis until the amounts are expensed. So these are funds that we retain for the project.
So is there a plan in the future for this project to continue, or are we just going to continue to flip this over year with no plan?
I don't understand the plan. I'm doing the accounting.
Sure. Mark might be a little more.
Yes.
Yeah,
the history. Sorry.
So there's still some accounting in the background of donations that have been received. We can certainly get in touch with the Stewardship Council, which is the group that spearheaded this, and I think the member of the Stewardship Council who's really made this happen, I think, was a former councillor Garbutt. So we can certainly look at the issue and where they're at with the program. Whether it gets cut out or stays in, it's still a net zero, Councillor Randy, but certainly if we don't need to plan for it in the future and we can take it off our books, that'd be great. This is the first time council has seen this. Usually this is stuff that runs in the background, and we're just trying to be upfront and transparent about how we're dealing with certain non-profit agencies and how we're trying to help out the community.
From my understanding on that fishery project, when the power went down, the school had lost 2 separate batches, and although they're interested in continuing, they need a battery backup system over there, from what I understand, before they'll continue to participate. So perhaps it's something we should look into in the future of doing something in collaboration with them. The second thing I was going to ask about was the Canada Day. So we provide a portion of the funding, portion comes from a grant, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So last year we didn't use any of the funding, and we allocated an amount that was not used. So that amount then goes into a reserve fund, does it not?
If I can, and Mark, I'll jump in.
Sure.
And that's why you see the general surplus at the end of your current year. All little things like that we weren't able to incorporate for one reason or another gets defaulted to your general surplus, which then gets turned into your ongoing general surplus. And you'll see how we're making use of that to bring things back to offset some of our expenses or one-time expenses. So yes, we put in an application. The municipality traditionally always has budgeted between $6,000 and $7,000 for this event, and we try to augment it with government grants. If they don't come in, we'll just, as the treasurer explained, we'll just cut back on what we do and what we can do depending on protocols.
So my question being then, if the $7,000 was deferred to reserves last year, we're going to the tax base for another 7, or we're going to bump that money back out of reserves in case it goes forward this year? You're muted there, Mark.
We always budgeted for it in expenses, Randy. It's just globally, when you operate main budgets globally, some departments have a harder time than others. So if you're saving in some departments, it offsets other departments. So you try to run it to hit the good times and bad times of every department, and that's how we function. We don't look at each department individually. Hence, why we're able to incorporate some of the salary increases, because we're able to find savings elsewhere. It's a constant that's always traditionally been used by council. For the first time in umpteen years, was not used last year. Right.
And that's why I was curious why we couldn't just repull last year's, but I understand your explanation. The final thing is the trailer for lawn cutting equipment. Have we got an estimate on this? Because and what type of trailer is this for $10,000?
So, thank you, Councillor Randy. We're going to get into the capital. So we talked about the Albion Community Center, and we have projected as if the budget presentation you see today is projected as if we were successful with the grant. We're hoping to receive some type of confirmation one way or the other by the end of the month, so the adjustments can be made accordingly if need be. But we're going forth, preparing ourselves to incorporate it. So that's why we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're fairly confident, but we're hoping to get some type of announcement within the next 30 days. The header, for those who may not understand the operations of an ice plant, this is the main piece of equipment that that shoots the ammonia underneath the ice into the piping system to ensure that your artificial ice is kept at a reasonable rate. They have a life expectancy, and it's met its life expectancy, and the cost associated is $50,000 out of our capital. And to answer your question before you ask, Councillor Randy, Bob has got a confirmation of approximate price, and we still are going to go out to tender. The rationale behind the trailer, as we've evolved over the last 4 years, equipment being purchased at the recreation department has evolved into the riding mowers and also evolved to the new sidewalk machine that we purchased and multi-use, is it called a tool cat, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And the current trailer that they have is over 10 years old, from what I'm told, is not practical to load these pieces of equipment. And because of weight restrictions, can't load the tool cat. So we're recreation is always awaiting the availability of public works to hook up the big dump truck and the big trailer to haul this small piece of equipment. So purchasing this new lower to the ground trailers with the higher fenders, with the proper loading mechanisms, will enable recreation to be more efficient and be able to run the tool cat to the cemeteries and the Alvin beach when required at their convenience, and also in terms of health and safety in loading and unloading equipment. So I've been told by the director and by the lead hand that amount they did specify out.
Okay. Will we be divesting of the previous trailer then?
That I will have to confirm. I'm assuming, personally, I don't think there's another need for it, but I will certainly ask the question of the employees who make use of the equipment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions or comments? I see none. All right, let's move on to the next one. Who's, oh, there he is.
Here we go. For the operations of planning and development for 2020, we have a budget of expenses for $65,000. We had actuals of $57,962, which is a variance. We expensed less by $7,038. That's related to the official plan. That was, we had a budget of $10,000 and we spent $3,698. So I believe it's due to COVID and it's be pushed back to 2021. For the projects, we have a budget of revenues of $50,000. We had actuals of $7,249 for a variance of $42,751. That's basically the difference is the loss of on the sale of or it's a paper loss on the sale of the industrial park property. And for the expenses, we have a budget of $45,000, and we expense $37,716 for a shortfall or a reduction of expense of $7,284. And that's related to well, basically that's related to the project's economic development and also the French River cultural industries. So the actual expenses for the project. For the 2021 budget, we have for operations, we have $69,440, which is comprised of the planning board or the planning board fees of $56,000. Proposed increase is $1 per household. And also we reintroduced the budget for the official plan for $10,000. For the projects, $36,733, that's includes the economic development budget of $33,000, and there's the French River cultural industries of $3,733, which is as per the agreement for the I believe it's a tourism kiosk. So that's the budgets for planning and development. Any questions?
We have questions? Seeing none, let's move to the...
For the capital, it's we have the municipal entrance signage project that's been deferred from 2020. As you recall, we had a project of about $50,000. $40,000 of it was financed by AMO fund, and the difference of $10,000 by financed by the signage reserve. And we, due to COVID delays and also the temperature, it's going to be done during the spring sometime in the next few months.
Questions for the capital budget under this line item? Seeing none, let's move on to the next one, which is taxation and operation grants.
Yes, for revenues, we had a 2020 budget of 6,999, well, 6.9 million, sorry, not 6,000, 6.9 million, with actuals of 7,015,000 for a variance of 16,000. It's a little, it's increase in interest on taxes, and there's a variance also concerning PILs and the sort. For expenses, we had a budget of $85,000. The actual was moved to general government. So the variance is 85,000 where it's budgeted, and the actuals and budgets will be moved to general government. For a 2021 budget for revenues, we have a budget of $7,029,635, which is an increase of $29,902. The majority of it is due to an increase in the operating grant that we received for 2021. It's confirmed. It's the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. And basically that's the budget.
Question on this section. I have Rick.
Thank you, through you. Just a question on the revenue, the big line where it's the tax revenue. So in 2020, we had a budget of 4718, and then the actual was 4645. And then, so why would there be a decrease from, well, there's a slight increase from this year's budget to last year, but why was there a decrease of about almost $42,000 in revenue? Is that because of an adjustment in the tax rate, or is that unpaid taxes, or what's the?
It's just when we do the budgets. Well, this is we're going to be more just with the budgets. The allocation of budget between classes was estimated last year, and I took the roll book and I really went through the assessments and I tried to estimate as best I could the budget. So it's not, there's no reduction in taxation. It's just that if you look at the residential full, which is the bigger item, usually when there's a plug for budgets, we increase a budget for taxation, we'll put it there. That was done in the past. Going forward, we're going to try to attribute the increase or the actual rates per assessment, per roll. So we're just trying to better budget the taxation. That's all, Rick. There's no decrease in terms of the payment. This is strictly revenues from the assessment roll, and it's not payment of payment on taxes. We look at the AR tax roll, accounts receivable, and then we control the receivables on the side. But all taxes are billed, and the revenues are recorded here.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next slide.
Okay. This is a recap of all the departmental budgets. We have total revenues of $9,095,343, expenses of $8,852,473 for a net operating surplus of $242,870. We add the amortization expense to calculate the tax increase. We add the amortization. Then we deduct the capital additions that we will see at the further slide, $1.2 million of capital. We have $1.3 million of transfers to reserves. And we have transfers from reserves of $793,000. And you have all the details of the components of those transfers. And we use use of general surplus of $402,000. That's for one-time fees. And for transfers of reserves, that's financed through general surplus. And we have the less the principal portion of long-term debt equals a shortfall of 124,280, which has to be, which is the amount of taxes that we have to generate, or the increase that we have to generate, which represents 2.49% increase.
Okay, questions, comments? So Mark, if we were going to do the stuff with the sewers, then that would change that figure
Yes.
to 2.04.
Yes, it's going to reduce 124,280 is going to reduce to it's going to be 102,120, which represents an increase of 2.04%.
04?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Rick.
So not really a question, but more of a statement, I guess. But so by levying the extra $25 for the sewer, you're basically allocating that fee more towards a user base environment as opposed to diverting that extra expenses through the whole of the French River.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm okay with that.
Yes, and also if we go back to the slide on the sewers, there was a capital item of $35,000. That is financed by the general reserve, the reserve dedicated for capital for sewers, and the amortization over time. The actual expenses, the amortization, that gets charged to the sewer budget, and that has to be recovered by the users and not by the general taxpayer that is not does not benefit from the sewer system.
Other comments, Mark?
Just if council wants to bear with us, I just want to have a little bit more of a conversation regarding the use of general surplus.
Yes, yes.
I think it's important for everybody to understand. As you saw at the beginning of our presentation, Mark projected a surplus of 2020 to 212,000. Our ongoing general surplus now, if you look at our financial statements from 2019, sat at $960,000 in general surplus. So add the 212 brings us just under 1.2 million, if I'm not correct, Mark.
Yes.
So don't be alarmed at dipping into our general surplus of 402. So to answer Councillor Randy's question of how we globally look at surpluses and how we make use of those surpluses to reduce the impact of tax rate, this is exactly how you make use of this. So one-time fees that you saw throughout the budget in terms of the continuation of dress uniforms for the fire department, about $4,500. One-time fire training of 10,000, the VAA trails of 15,000. As council was all in agreement, it was difficult for the committee to continue fundraising, and this project has been lagging. We need to complete it. The musical outdoor instruments proposed for the Albin area with a donation of 5,000 in the works as well. The purchase of the sound equipment proposed for Joe Chartrand Park for outdoor series concerts. 5,000 attributed to a swing set to introduce some type of children's activities within the parks. And the one thing that we jumped over in Public Works was the cost for Montéguérin, the culvert replacement. If you all recall, we have an ongoing project on Montéguérin, which is a cost of about $1.5 million. If we followed the inspections of our bridges, that would need to be started in September. We took the position that we can't put $1.5 million project on the backs of our taxpayers at 100%. So we found it reasonable to go ask for an engineering costing to do two things, to do a structural analysis of that culvert, and also do a lot of prep work in terms of preparing the project for shovel-ready purposes should the federal and or provincial governments introduce additional infrastructure dollars, hopefully at 90%, that we would able to cover that project at 90%, leaving us on the hook for 150 would be a lot more reasonable for council and our taxpayers. So the $45,000 will, that evaluation will be done to be able to achieve that and also achieve the health and safety risks that we've been saying, and just to justify it with more in-depth analysis with actual digging and boreholes and investigation. So that's a one-time expense that we're proposing to take out of our surplus at that point in time. The landfill environmental assessment of 60,000 would come out of our general surplus. Beautification project of 10,000, and you'll notice the transfer to our operating reserves, which we'll touch base on how we're making use of transferring things into specific reserves for use for future projects. So, and if you recall, we said we had issues and impacts in terms of our vehicle reserves that we needed to boost up. We're proposing a transfer there as well that we can talk to. So if there's any questions, I just thought it needed a little bit further explanation for everybody of how we make use of that general surplus. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Randy?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. My comment would just be that this being the third budget process I've been through, having Mark Fleury come on board and work with the municipality, that this has probably been one of the easiest to understand and the most well thought out exchange. I think the accounts have been set up a little differently and things flow better. I see better transparency in this method compared to previous years were a little difficult to understand. Of course, we all think there's a few minor tweaks, but overall, I have great confidence in this budget, and I thank the staff for all the hard work they've done preparing this for us and the citizens of the French River. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments before we move on? Okay. Bob.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to echo Randy's comments. I'd like to thank both Marks for answering questions for me throughout the week and even up to this morning, which I didn't have to bore everybody else today with. Being the new kid on the block, I find the budget very easy to understand and work with. And again, merci, Marc et Marc.
All right, we're not done yet, folks.
I know.
Let's go on to capital budget. I guess that's a summary of what we've discussed, Mark. Did
Yes, that's a summary. So we touched all these items during the departmental budget. So basically, overall, $1.2 million in capital additions for the year. Some were deferred from last year, the bylaw truck, the Labras Road rehabilitation, and also the municipal entrance. Transferred from reserves, we have to fund these capital additions. So $783,893 will come from general capital reserves. Sorry, the capital grants. We were successful in having grants of $416,878. That's a combination of modernization fund for the general, the council chamber audiovisual upgrades, 30 grand. There's also there's a gas tax and also CIP funding for roads for 226,000 OCIF, sorry, funding for 226,664 for road. Mesh Go Evo is modernization fund. Public Works building upgrades, that's COVID resilience funding, that's pending approval. And the Alban Community Center ICIP, that's 40,214, also pending approval for the Alban Community Center.
Okay, further discussion on these projects? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Reserves. Okay.
Yeah, the reserves. So this is the movement of reserves. We're looking at opening balance, which is the ending balance of 2020. So this opening balance is There might be a little bit of tweaking depending on the amortization, final amortization for the year end. But we're right now we're we're opening balance of $5.5 million. Use of reserves $793,893. Majority of it is capital. There's $10,000 of this is taken off operating reserves that will show in the next slide for official plan. Contribution for through amortization. This increases the reserves by $1.1 million. And additional contributions that we just seen in the previous slide. It's $89,916. That's an additional contribution from general surplus to the vehicles reserve, and to help finance the future purchases, especially the fire trucks due in a couple of years. And the operating reserves, we have contributions from a general surplus of $150,000. The details are on the following slide.
Questions? Let's move on to the next slide.
So these are the, sorry, Mark.
No, I was,
Sorry, Mark.
no, that's fine. So I'll take care of the 150,000 in rationale in terms of how we address this. So election reserves is always something that we try to build up between $20,000 and $25,000 in preparation for the 2022 elections. That way there, we don't have to go back to the taxpayers and have an increase for that expense in that current year. Working fund reserve, if you recall from a December 3rd meeting, comments were made in terms of future increases of various boards and how do we handle that and how we lessen the impact on the general taxpayer. We built up that working reserve up to 200,000 so that we have some flexibility should we be hit with a significant increase from our boards, VSAD, health units, and other boards that we technically don't have much of a say other than pay the bill, because we've tried that before. The winter control reserve, the plan here is, again, we talked about it to ensure that we have stability in our operating reserves consistently. And if we dip into, we have this reserve to offset any future large storms or large winter event impacts in the future. The goal here is to build this reserve up to 250, which is probably 1 year in advance of our regular operating budget. You'll notice community development, we're proposing to add an additional 10,000 to 27,500. That's in preparation of long-term planning and how council decides to do the public consultations or how to hire somebody to assist us with that process. So we're putting funds aside for that. We're all looking forward to our new highway sign to be installed this spring. And that being said, once one goes up, we all know what the next question is going to be. So we found it appropriate to, because we deplenished that fund with this current project, to start rebuilding that fund for the next project. So we're proposing to put in another $20,000. And again, related to some of the discussions in terms of a playground in the Wellville area, we're proposing to add start adding a reserve fund into parks, an additional 10,000 towards that potential project in the near future. So that's how we're proposing to add on to our operating reserves. And I just want to clarify one thing from Councillor Dave. The reserves used for the sewer system is a dedicated capital reserve for the sewer users. So it's not the general levy that funds that reserve. They have their own general reserve. We were proposing an operating reserve similar to what we have here for our other municipal operations.
I have Renee and then I have Randy.
So just a question for me, because beautification wise, so I know that like last year we had a $10,000 budget, which we used up 6,700 and something. And then this year there's another 10,000, but we need the brackets and the flowers. Is it possible that to have some kind of reserve? So say if I have 3,000 or 4,000 left in that 10,000, that we keep that aside for next year so that we don't have to put it in the budget again? Because I mean, every year there would be like a $2,000 cost for flowers, to put into those flowers, or, and if we're just, I don't know how you fix that up.
Mark?
Either Mark, but there's two ways of looking at it. So as reserves, we try to use for one-time expenses as much as possible. So the purchasing of flowers, if now that we're set up infrastructure-wise and have the new planters and brackets put up, Councilor Renee, I would suggest that starting next year, we start incorporating under operations the purchase of flowers, because that's a consistent yearly activity that will continue. So certainly something we're going to have to address in the operational budget going forward once all of the infrastructure and great work from the volunteers has been done. That's how I would handle it. And if there's any future projects that council contemplates, then we can look at creating additional reserves as need be.
Okay.
That answer your question?
I have Randy, and then I have Dean.
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. My question for Mark Gagnon again is, I see the legal line item has not increased in the reserve fund. Is it not prudent to keep adding to that capital line? Although we've been fortunate this year not to have any significant legal challenges, there's always that potential.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The original intent of creating that legal was council authorized the creation up to $25,000. We've been fortunate, as you said, over the last 4 years, the minor things that have come through, we were able to deal with the budgetary items. This was mainly set aside for any potential union grievances, those types of procedures, and we have set up the regular legal obligations in operations budgets, which we meet at every year. So could be looked at. Something certainly, if council wishes to build it up a little bit more, we can look at it next year.
Just a comment on that. Also, keep in mind that union negotiations are over. So we're good for the next 3 years. So the costs associated with negotiations are minimal at best, right?
It was mainly set up not for negotiations. Madam Mayor, was mainly set up in case of grievances or arbitration or those types of issues. I don't foresee any happening in the circumstances that we are in right now.
Yeah.
Just to add, sorry, Madam Mayor, we have a budget of $10,000 for legal fees in the operating budget also. So just to reassure that Councillor has it.
Next person is Dean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question out of curiosity. We have 25 grand reserved for human resources, and I'm wondering what you've got in mind, Mark. What's that for?
You know, and I appreciate the question because I think I complicated 2 line items. So yes, legal items, human resources. I apologize, was mainly set up for union grievances, union arbitration cases should they ever come forth. So thank you for the question and the clarification. I mixed up 2 line items together. So
you could put that together?
Yeah, no, because the one legal I would like to keep separate for the simple reason, if we all remember, we have, you know, under legislation, we have not the ombudsman, sorry, but the Integrity Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Those can cost fairly heavily if there is a complaint that needs to go to additional stages. That was one of the main reasons that we set up that line item for those purposes. So we've been fortunate since it came into force 2 years ago. We've only had, I think, 1 issue that was dealt with, which was very minute. So I appreciate the question and putting me back on track.
So we're going to keep the 2 line items?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just to probably better clarify for Dean, one's for the employees and one is for counselors, the legal one, right? For the Integrity Commissioner part.
Yeah. Well, Integrity Commissioner and any other legal issues that may come up that are costly. So, but yeah, you're correct, Councilor Renee. Human resources is mainly employee-related issues. And then legal is a variety of potential legal issues that may come up at council or administration ones.
All right. Shall we go on to the next slide?
Matt, did you want to?
Yes, I always look for the mute, not mute, sorry. This is the deferred revenue. We have the deferred parkland revenue. Opening balance is $93,000. This is higher than last year's draft ending balance for the budget. It's mainly because the Alban Beach has been deferred to 2021, so the funds have not been expensed. It's going to be expensed in 2021. So that's where you see the negative $22,970. That's for the Alban Beach. Modernization fund, we opening balance $547,000. We're proposing contributions of $65,000 towards the projects we were identified. So the ending balance would be $482,000. So it's $547 less 65 grand for $482,000. The AMO Main Street that has been used up in 2020 for the sign project. There's another item that I wanted to discuss is the COVID funding. We put the $254,000 into a reserve. We're in discussions right now with the auditor. Is it a reserve or is it a deferred, dedicated deferred revenue? So it might switch from one line or the other. The bottom line is the same. It's just where we classify it. We're because every municipality they want to have a consistent financial statement presentation for these funds, the COVID funds. So that's just to clarify. And if there's a change in the next few weeks or for the year end where the $254,000 is attributed, it might be in deferred revenue instead of a reserve. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. We're just deferring the unspent portions to the future years.
Thank you. Comments or questions?
I'll say this much, Madam Mayor. I think we have a pretty healthy financial statement. When I look at all these reserves, they're leaving the little bits here and there, but we've got a lot of money put off to one side.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Nothing wrong with it, but
No.
So,
well, I know of one employer in Sudbury right now who wish they had lots of reserves. Okay. Next slide.
So that's the effect of the taxes or the proposed tax increase on an assessment of an average based on an impact assessment of $100,000. We keep the 100,000 because it's easy to multiply. If your assessment is 300, you just times 3. So this example is let's say it's in the Wellville with a sewer hookup. So the tax rate, that's before we do the adjustment for the $22,000. That's based on 2.49% increase, is an increase of $16.30 for the tax rate. The education tax rate has not been modified for residential, has been reduced for commercial as part of the COVID relief provided by the province. So for residential, it stays at the same rate as last year. OPP fees, there's a reduction of $6.72. And the sewer, there's an increase of $25 for a total of $1,638.46. So for sewer, with people with sewer, an increase of $34.58. Without a sewer, an increase of $9 and change from year to year, based on an assessment of 100,000.
Thank you.
not many houses left at 100,000 in the community after last summer.
Yeah, but you know, we did a report we checked the impact this week, and a typical house in French River, the assessment or an average is 160,000 roughly, and waterfront is an average of $250 some thousand. for waterfront. That's the cottage, the small cottage to the big house. The average is 250,000. So we always assume it's high. It's very high, but there's some lower end cottages also. So
Okay, thank you. I guess at this point, we're coming to the end of the budget presentation. I will open it up for general questions and comments, but before I do, I certainly, on behalf of council, want to start by thanking all the department heads for working hard and I would say abiding by our wishes and not coming with a wish list that was unmanageable. But at the same time, I want to thank council too for not bringing your wish list to a point where it can't be handled, or it would be downloaded and it would create a lot of problems. I think that having a treasurer, Mark Fiddy, you've been certainly a great asset to French River. We're lucky to have you and the work you do. And just like the others were saying, I found going through the budget this year far easier to understand, and there were certainly a lot more details that we appreciated. The 2.4 tax increase, I think, is something to be very proud of, considering that we are going to add more services with this, certainly with or better services with the extra employees, but also the community projects that are out there that will benefit everyone, whether you're seasonal or whether you're permanent people here. So on behalf of, and Mark Gagnon, of course, your leadership is always appreciated. And I know we were sending a whole bunch of questions to you all week, and I'm glad council did that. So a huge thank you. So now I'm just going to open it up for general questions and comments. Our next meeting, so the process is, Mark Gagnon, that on March 3rd is going to come for public, right? For discussion and presentation?
Exactly. If council is of the understanding that they're happy with what was presented today, we will make the adjustments as mentioned for the sewer so that those numbers are actually decreased. As Mark said, we will prepare the public presentation for the March 3rd council meeting to be public at that point, and then give another 2-week opportunity for questions from the public, and then bring the budget for final approval by council on March 17th. Just for your information, we're trying to get a little bit ahead of the game this year. So I know Martin has prepared a lot of his tenders ahead of time and just basically waiting for council's resolution to start releasing some of those projects. And we've started working on the environmental assessment tender as well to get ourselves ready ahead of time.
Great. And at Roma too, the minister announced that there will be some infrastructure funding made available. So important for Montéguérin to be ready to go for our application. So if we can, I know that it's almost shovel ready, but with the new engineering, there may be more to add to it, right?
Yeah, support our application even more.
Yeah. So that's one thing we'll have to do is to lobby for that infrastructure funding, because $1.5 million is too much to put on the taxpayers.
We'll take the opportunity. We have one of our councillors as a rep on the AMO board, and if he can push infrastructure dollars for rural and small municipalities in Ontario at 90% funding, not just COVID related, we still have pressures for infrastructure. I think that's important to pass that message along. Yeah,
exactly. All right, any final comments, questions for any of the marks or Dean?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I've been following our Dave here for the most part on my desktop computer. I've had the budget, and I note a few discrepancies or differences sometimes between the original budget documents that we looked at and the kind of brief examples that we've been looking at on the that the public is seeing. And I guess I'm just wanted to ask when we may have the public presentation on March 3rd, how is it going to be done? Is it going to be are the public going to have a chance to see the budget in more detail, or just the kind of information that we've been looking at today in briefs?
Maybe if I can, if Carly is listening, can we go back just to the regular screen and get rid of the PowerPoint, please? Perfect. Thank you so much. To answer your question, yeah, when we go into the public presentation, we will share a little bit of more details, and we generally show where our increases, decreases are, and rationale, and the list of various projects a little bit more. We will not share the line by line item details, but we will certainly expand on the information. We'll also, if you recall, part of that presentation is we show pie graphs to show the percentage of your taxes that go to the various services and departments, and then at the end show them the result of the tax increase and the impact on their $100,000 assessment base. So we will be, and technically this PowerPoint here, although very general, it will be made public as well at this point in time, but there will be a little bit more details in the public presentation.
And in the meantime, too, if members of the public are listening, I encourage to send the questions in. Just because the meeting's going to finish in shortly, send your questions in, and you will get answers to those questions that you may have, so that you understand clearly what's in the budget. Okay. All right, everybody okay? Thank you very much for giving up your afternoon. Mark?
Yeah, just to reiterate, thank you very much, everybody. I know it's, video conferencing for 3 hours, 4 hours is very long. I appreciate your patience, your time, appreciate your questions ahead of time, and also your questions during. And just to echo the mayor's results, I really appreciate it's a team effort administratively between Mark, the department heads, and all the staff that participate. I want to give a big shout out and a great thank you to them as well. So thank you very much, everyone. And this, although I had reservations about this process, end result is it worked out well.
Thank you, Mark. Thank all the staff.
Yes.
Well done.
Because I think the dialogue's a little bit different when you're in person, but have to say this was very productive. So thank you all. Enjoy the weekend. There is snow coming, lots of snow. So have a good and safe weekend, and stay isolated and stay safe. Bonsoir tout le monde. Miigwech.
We do need to adjourn, Mrs. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mel, for keeping me. So I need a motion to adjourn. Renee and Dave. All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you.
I'll see you in a couple weeks, I guess.